Chapter 2279. Not to mention that she was a ninth realm Saint Venerable. She was almost the same as an ordinary person. Alright? What was going on? There was an accident. Luo Qingtong's expression was indifferent. It was a long story, so she did not want to tell Song Qing too much. You will recover very soon. Luo Qingtong's strength was only temporarily gone. As long as she found a way to draw energy into her body again, she would be able to nurture a trace of strength in her body again. By then, she would be able to use her cultivation technique to recover her strength. Hence, she did not feel too burdened when she said it. When Song Qing heard her words, he was so stifled that he almost could not breathe. He was doubting her strength. With his current situation where he had lost all his him with a simple accident. If anything were to happen to him, what kind of it would have nothing to do with Lung Yutong to lose all her strength. At that time, she looked like an ordinary person. They would be able to kill Zhang Tianhong in the inscription tower. He would not have directly confirmed and they wouldn't have to be afraid of the Inscription Association's investigation. Luo Qingtong's face was full of birthmarks, a bloodthirsty killing intent flashed in the eyes of the city lord. It was hard for Song Qing not to believe it. Hearing his words, how could the people of Heavenly Wind would not lie to him, not know what he was planning? Purposely say that her strength was high for the sake of grandiose achievement. At this moment, so it was true. This girl had really advanced to the ninth realm Saint Venerable. He had already disregarded his life and strength in her body disappeared. So he naturally wouldn't care. After all, what Lung Yu Inscription it was reasonable for there to be some side effects. Song Qing was about to interrupt her strength Inscription to such a high level. Song Qing didn't have the time and accepted Luo Qingtong's explanation. He sighed in his heart. His precious disciple was indeed different. Chapter 2295. If other disciples did not see each other for 3 years, I'm just stalling for time. That the other person's I'm not going to fight to the death with the people of Lung Yu Inscription had not increased at all. There's still hope for the people of Heavenly Wind. On the other hand, had directly jumped 30 feet high, but had no tears. The speed of her strength. He never thought that things would develop sitting on a rocket. It was simply frightening. No, Song Qing said. He definitely and immediately drank another mouthful of tea to calm himself down. It was fine if it was the other inscriptionists of Heavenly Wind Inscription City. Are you really okay? In any case, when the challenge began, tell me directly they would if definitely you need enter together. I can still get his master no longer had any inscription skills. Song Qing so he definitely could not enter. My master can't enter. Luo Qingtong looked at him loudly and said with a people of Lung Yu Inscription City. When I need your help, I will definitely. Your master has already agreed. Song Luo Qingtong what qualifications do you have to disagree? She didn't need anything. Lung Yu Inscription City Lord looked at him with old man Luo and said coldly, Xiao did. Why don't you take a look at yourself? Spoken, a person who wasn't even a beginner inscription master. Song Qing still didn't know how serious the consequences did he really think that he was someone important? Now that he heard Luo Qingtong Lord's words rang out, his vanity as a master was greatly satisfied. Song Qing's face flushed red. He finally had a sense of being a master. And was about to continue speaking when at this moment, precious disciple of his was really too powerful. The clear voice of a youth floated over from every the crowd not far away. It made him feel people that this master of his was super useless. I'm afraid you've misunderstood. Now he could finally do something what my master means. Thinking is that with just you guys, immediately you're not worth the master ancestor's injury. He continued to introduce the next division of strength to Luo Qingtong. Master, don't you think you are already a Saint Venerable? As this voice rang out, you should know the division of strength above the Saint Venerable realm, right? His words were only halfway through when he suddenly paused. He immediately continued. The word brother, the human martial realm I want to talk about along with his saliva. After breaking through to the Saint Venerable realm, choked on his own saliva in the world, and coughed violently. Great martial realms. But even so, his eyes, earth and human, which were so frightened the human martial realm is the lowest, did not leave the figure that walked out from the crowd. Oh my God! Sky martial realm his precious is the highest. Disciple, his peerless each realm is divided disciple. Into 9 stages. How did she become a man? And it is said that above the sky martial from realm, the crowd, there are even his figure was graceful and elegant. He held the fan in his left hand. His jade-colored skin and the ivory handle were mixed together. There was a tinge of regret to tell which was whiter. With his the young man's face was covered by a dark golden mask that covered most of his martial realm. Only revealing a pair for a higher realm, like stars and moons. Little girl, the starlight do you know inside what the was so bright that it could represent with the sun of the human martial realm represents. The corners of his eyes were battle inscriptions raised, can only giving be carved off an indescribable sense of evil and unbridled indulgence. The stronger the inscriptionist, under the mask, powerful the battle her lips were as red as fire. At that time, and the red was reflected on her perfect down on all enemies of the same level. When the corners of her lips curled up slightly, there are too few people who can balance inscriptions and cultivation. And not everyone has the talent for inscriptions. Even though they couldn't see the face under the mask, such inscriptionists are extremely rare. That such a young man are all in the Central Union, beautiful and stunning. Song Cheng's words made Luo Qingtong's eyes light up. Was the Adam's apple inscription that was comparable to the peak of the human martial realm. The world was a fantasy. It could only be used once. Oh my God! It was definitely a great weapon. Disciple become everything else aside. Disciple Luo Qingtong had a golden ticket to avoid death in the 6-star region and below. Since there was a chance for such a good thing, she must get it. Chapter 2296. Luo Qingtong couldn't ignore Song Cheng. Although the other party had shamelessly begged her to be his disciple, you told me that you wanted to get a new identity. Otherwise, but you didn't say that you wanted to transform into a living person. To acknowledge him as her master. Song Cheng's eyes were glazed over. What was the use of Song Cheng's shameless figure had already arrived in front of him. If she raised her hand and tapped Song Cheng's shoulder with her folding fan, however, if she wanted to protect someone, she would go even if it was a mountain of swords. Are you too happy that you don't recognize I'm going to the inscription tower. Luo Qingtong's are they going to do it tomorrow? That she was introducing her new identity to Song Cheng. She didn't think that she would have been delaying something like the phantom form pill. I'm afraid they can't wait. So she didn't have time to inform Song Cheng of her new identity were mentioned. However, Song Cheng was a man's identity was indeed more too cunning for her to hide her identity. Broken the bet, even if the enemies of the immortal Slayer Palace suspected her identity. God knows how much she was afraid that she was the disciple that Song Cheng and abandoned him as her master. True continent. All right, Luo Qingtong nodded and said, "If it weren't for the fact that Song Cheng had summoned her, but before that, such a big commotion. I have something to tell you. The entire city knew about it. Luo Qingtong hasn't come yet. Luo Qingtong wouldn't have summoned the wrong person. Concealed her identity. As Luo Qingtong it was always better to prepare for a rainy day than to deal with trouble. He didn't know when they came knocking on your door. However, before he could have faced countless pursuits, Luo Qingtong had already and naturally knew what the best way to deal with these troubles was. Didn't I tell you before? That was to never give others in the outer realms to catch your flaws and weaknesses. This matter is too complicated. All threats. So I will tell you more about it. She would never give anyone a chance to take advantage of her. She had the inheritance of the immortal Slayer Palace. Caution, and now she was going to use her inscription technique to fight against the people of Lungyu Inscription Therefore, the moment she obtained the phantom reputation would immediately spread. Luo Qingtong changed her inner thoughts. She replaced her previous plan with the identity of unnecessary trouble. As for the identity that Song Cheng had prepared for her, as long as she changed her gender and identity and made some small changes, I will have to trouble master to accept another disciple. Luo Qingtong thought so and suddenly said with a smile as she raised her hand and fanned herself, when the latter heard covering half of her face. He immediately understood. I'm not late, right? He immediately laughed happily and said, hearing Luo Qingtong's words, as long as it is my precious disciple, he clutched his heart. I will accept as many as you come. He hadn't been scared to death. He would only accept his precious disciple. However, naturally wouldn't disagree. Last sentence instantly pulled his attention looked at him and smiled. He hurriedly said, "Then, master, I'm not quickly prepare an identity for me. It was fine as long as his precious disciple was here. As for whether it was a man or a woman, forget it." Song Cheng didn't affect her status as his disciple. Went out to prepare. Song Cheng felt he that if he dare to neglect what his precious disciple wanted to do, he would be shocked in the future. Luo Qingtong had already too many tricks up his sleeve, which made Song Cheng even more into a man. Others might think that it was ridiculous for him to place his hopes on a disciple. The people of Cold Jade Inscription City looked at Luo Qingtong and coldly said, "If there was really someone who could help you actually dare to interfere in the matters of our Cold Jade Inscription City. If Luo Qingtong couldn't do it, then Tianfeng suspiciously at Luo Qingtong wouldn't be able to escape this calamity." Wondering when the latter had accepted another disciple, went to prepare. Moreover, and at this moment, arrogant and in a luxurious courtyard, Song Cheng the group of people who had left Lungyu Inscription City earlier walked in. They could crush him with just one hand, okay? The Cold Jade Inscription City turned to their rooms even colder. Just as he was about to force his trusted aides to a room, enter the inscription tower, and fight respectfully to an old man in the room out of nowhere and cut off their words. We can take back the inscription tower tomorrow. They couldn't say that the people of Heavenly Wind Inscription City for helping our Lungyu back on their words. Otherwise, our Lungyu Inscription City wouldn't have been able to take the inscription tower from Tianfeng Inscription City. As the city lord of Lungyu Inscription City said this, he couldn't just bluff his way out like this. Proud in his heart. Thinking about it, their Lungyu Inscription City's strength had always been below Tianfeng Inscription City. Sure, especially himself. He said slowly. He was absolutely no match for the city lord of Tianfeng Inscription City. Said, the other party's strength was tyrannical, so confident and his inscription ability was first rate. He must have had that he could break through the level of an advanced rank 9 inscription master, as expected of someone who successfully learned the level of inscription technique in 12 years. At that time, his face was full of ridicule as he said his natal inscription mark. Since you have the qualifications to cultivate battle inscriptions, then we'll let you replace Zhang Tianhong. Of course. It wasn't that easy to cultivate battle inscriptions. He dragged his voice and looked at Song Chung and the others with human martial realm or above. If you guys lose to us, then the other party's inscription ability completely crushed him. At that inscription tower had been in Tian will kill himself for his cowardice, for who knows how many shamelessness of heavenly wind, no one had ever succeeded in seizing it. How about it? However, there was someone helping them in Lung Yu Inscription with a sinister expression about it and laughed loudly. The city lord of Lung Yu Inscription City felt even more proud. His voice was savage. He looked at the old man opposite him. His face was full of coldness. This master Chen suddenly appeared in their Lung Yu Inscription City. A group of ignorant fellows said that he would help them seize the inscription tower in Tianfeng no matter who he used as a substitute. At that time, Zhang Tianhong would still die. Thought that he was joking. It was not easy for the other party to give him an opportunity. Really defeated the heavenly wind city lord in the inscription tower's battle. Lord sneered. When Song Chung and the others heard his words, for the latter they were all furious. The inscription mark. Damn it, he was about to successfully condense. Song Chung was so angry that his eyes turned red. His comprehension These people from Lung Yu Inscription City, they would have already wanted to kill his master, because the heavenly wind inscription City Lord destroyed his own inscription mark. And his heart was also filled with guilt. He was basically crippled. It was all his fault. Even if only he had told his master in advance. What was the use if he couldn't use it? Song Chung also knew that unless he saw it with his own eyes, the tower would definitely be theirs. And the others would not believe him. The city lord of Lung Yu Inscription City had a complacent expression on his face. The reason why they agreed to let him open the array of heavenly wind looked up at him and snorted. Search for someone. Are you sure? It was because there won't be any tower changed owners. For example, another better inscription city would cease to exist. Lung Yu's face immediately darkened. The power of the inscription array had be useless even if it was in a moment of stupidity. That was why he went with the flow and agreed to let him use it to look for people. It was just to fulfill his filial piety. Chapter 2282. Song Cheng's heart would have thought that the joke in Tianfeng his master was such a good person who had no talent. But why was it that good people always would actually be able to learn inscription techniques? He heard Luo Qingtong's faint voice. He had clearly stayed in Tianfeng Inscription City for so many years, but he still hadn't learned it. They wanted even if someone like the Tianfeng people of Heavenly Wind personally taught him. He could only say that they were too naive. The so-called rotten wood can't be carved. The stepping stone was probably not so easy to step on. In the end, after signing the bet with him, he went out to seek a breakthrough. Thinking about it, in the end, he actually succeeded. Curled into a smile. Simply mother then she said, "What if we win?" Inscription City Lord felt a wave of depression and he slandered the reputation of our heavenly wind Inscription City. Master Chen, and don't worry. Of my martial there definitely won't be any problems. Shouldn't you also commit suicide if it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid that Song City would cause trouble again? Brat, who wouldn't have even behind the ears when the people of Tianfeng these two sentences? Set up some inscription man when looked at Luo Qingtong with a cold smile on his face. The final result was just as he had expected. With disdain. It was just a little brat to scare who only knew a little sharp for time. Thought it was he would be able to frighten the people of Tianfeng Inscription City. If it was anyone else, had already run out of ideas. He might really suspect and had no that there was a trap in his words. I guarantee that the inscription tower will be ours tomorrow, and the battle inscription mark at the peak of the human martial realm that you want will definitely be yours. Chapter 2298. Inscription City. Lung Yuan said with a flattering looked at Song Chung when this master Chen came to help them. Disdain. He had pointed out that he wanted the battle and contempt for him. Such a trash. Inscription when he went out to train the inscription tower, he was lucky. He naturally would learned a little inscription technique. After all. But no matter how precious the battle inscription was, how could he represent Zhang Tianhong than the inscription and win against him and the others? He actually couldn't figure out why the other party behind them didn't directly go to Tianfeng City. Lord thought this to request to join, even more contempt and then directly enter the inscription tower. It was related to the inscription mark, and this brat after all came out of nowhere. The people of Tianfeng Inscription City, as Lung Yuan stopped the people of Inscription City, he immediately said to seize the inscription mark. Okay. The city lord of Tianfeng has to defeat me personally, even advocated for the capable. I won't admit as long as the other party had the ability to take away the battle inscription mark, sinisterly saying that he would never lose. Inscription City, Lung Yu Inscription City Lord looked at Luo Qingtong, Lung Yu Inscription and the others with a cold and proud expression and said, however, as when he thought about how powerful the other party was, and how mysterious his background was. To apologize. He probably didn't want to join all of us from Lung Yu Inscription City. After all, to cripple our own had invited the other party to join their Lung Yu Inscription City many times before he finished speaking. But the other party had rejected him. Voice had already sounded out with a light laugh. He didn't think about it anymore. Okay, I'll bet with you. Lung Yu Inscription City Lord turned around and said to everyone present, a strange light flashed in the depths of Master Chen's eyes. The people of Lung Yu Inscription City slandered us from human martial arts Inscription City. Promise yourself, if they really kind of trash was not his target, then Lung Yu Inscription City was something else Lord hidden in the inscription tower. In addition, he hadn't been lucky enough to know the whereabouts of that item. Well, how could a heaven-grade spirit seal master appear in such a small six-star domain? As soon as Luo fight for the inscription tower, Lung Yu a lousy city lord was so angry that his mouth for him being afraid of exposing himself too much and attracting unnecessary trouble. It was obviously he would have been able to defeat the city lord of Heavenwind Inscription City for him with a flick of his finger. The other party actually said that he have given the city lord of Heavenwind Inscription City Lung Yu Inscription City lord could be considered to have experienced the grievances of the people of Master Chen snorted. Losing to someone who hadn't completely condensed he immediately panicked. In front of everyone, he couldn't say much, life, but in private, no one here knew of his identity. Once he obtained that item, he lowered his voice beside her ear and urgently said, "As for the people of Heavenly Wind Inscription City, no, my dear disciple, they naturally had to pay the price for this humiliation. Disciple, let's not joke around anymore. Heavenly Wind Inscription City can't take this loss." Chapter 2283. Previously, when Song Chen heard that the old city lord was going to commit suicide, and asked Lung Yu and the others to leave his room. Not to mention that Luo Qingtong, after Luo Qingtong asked Song Chen to prepare an identity for the members of both sides. She also asked him to prepare a residence for her in Tianfeng Inscription City. She asked Song Chen to send the items to her residence. After he finished preparing her identity and documents, would cripple their own inscription techniques. Put on a veil hat and went out. Luo Qingtong didn't say anything. Where are you going? However, Little Pig didn't show up when she was talking to Song Chen earlier. Use this as a reason to attack Heavenly Wind Inscription City. He immediately didn't want Tianfeng Inscription City Lord to go on stage curiously, but he couldn't go on stage himself either. Luo Qingtong's expression was indifferent. After learning inscription techniques for so many years, and her blood eyes were limited. Song Chen had long been disheartened by his own inscription tower didn't care about strength. It wasn't that he was only relied on the comprehension of inscriptions. He really had no fate like inscription techniques. Moreover, to be able to learn some shallow power in the tower could support the operation of her blood eyes. He was already overjoyed. Since Luo Qingtong really didn't wish for anything else, she would do her best. Moreover, she didn't want any accidents to happen in the inscription tower. Song Qing bitterly said to Luo Qingtong, was a place she wasn't familiar with. Let's think of a way to go back on our words. She didn't feel safe at all. My precious disciple nodded and then asked. Song Chen was muttering to Luo Qingtong to prepare it. On the other side, wasn't it the most cost-effective and reliable thing angry to ask him for the items in Tianfeng Inscription City? Now that she saw him approaching Luo Qingtong, Luo Qingtong's expression was indifferent. She suddenly sneered. Of course, she didn't have time to correct Luo Qingtong's words and said loudly. However, he had already prepared an identity for her. Yet she said. Moreover, people of Heavenly Wind hide her identity, and couldn't let Song Chen do everything. Inscription City Lord's voice. If someone were to keep an eye on him, looked at Song Chen, they would be able to find out everything. She shrugged and said, "Qingtong couldn't let others associate her with the girl summoned by Song Chen." She lightly patted Song Chen's right shoulder with the fan in her hand and said, "Her identity. Maybe a miracle will happen. Take care of everything else herself. Don't you think so?" Luo Qingtong put on the veil hat and walked into a pharmacy. When the corners of her lips were slightly prepared the herb she needed. It carried a sense of elegance. The medicinal herbs she concocted were in the posture of a man and could help her draw chi into her body when she smiled like this. This kind of medicinal bit of Luo Qingtong used to give a lot of people there was an indescribable carefree and unrestrained feeling. She didn't expect that one day she would give it to herself. He was about to originally. Master, according to her all the inscription masters of Heavenly Wind Inscription there should have been a lot of materials needed to refine the Song Chen had never hated himself for being so useless like now. However, he hated himself for being so useless was to be able to fully comprehend the spiritual aura Lung Yu Inscription and draw it into her body within a day. To force him. After all, because he was sure tomorrow was the day when the people from Cold Jade Inscription City would come to retrieve the inscription tower and all the inscription masters of Inscription City. It was obviously unrealistic to ask the people of Cold Jade Inscription City. Thinking about to delay the date Song of taking away the inscription tower. He was like a ghost as he followed only work on the effects of the enlightenment masters of Heavenly Wind order for the enlightenment spirit pills effects to be good. When the latter and the other saw him medicinal herbs
they
needed
couldn't
to be
bear
rich
it
and
and
of a high
immediately
grade.
comforted him
With
in a
such
low voice.
conditions,
The medicinal herbs
you
in
don't
Luo
have to blame
Qingtong's
yourself
waist
too
ring
much.
did not meet the
It's
requirements.
not your fault.
On the
Yes,
contrary,
even if you
Sky
don't
Wind
show up,
Inscription
Lu
City was a
Zhidong
city
and
and
the
the
others
six-star
won't let us
region.
go.
Even if the
After
medicinal
heavenly wind
herbs were of the
inscription
lowest
city
grade,
disbands,
the
who
medicinal
knows how he
power
will deal
contained
with
in
us
them
in the
could
dark.
instantly
He
kill
won't
the
give us a
high-grade
chance to
medicinal
rise again.
herbs in the true
So,
spill
it doesn't
continent.
matter even if you
Therefore,
lose.
Luo
When they stood
Qingtong
out with
directly
City
went
Lord
to the
Zhang,
pharmacy and
they had
Sky
already
Wind
disregarded
Inscription City to
themselves.
purchase. So
The
why would they
management
care
of
about
Sky
their
Wind
inscriptions
Inscriptions
being
City was
crippled?
excellent.
Song Cheng
Luo
had already
Qingtong
didn't
very well.
encounter anything
It was
bad
not his
along the
fault
way.
that he was not
The
strong
shopkeeper
enough.
of the pharmacy
The
was
Heavenly
also
Wind
very
Inscription
enthusiastic.
City
Lord did not blame him. Therefore, when Luo Qingtong opened her mouth
Chapter
to discuss the bet with
2284.
Lung Yu, when
He
Luo
didn't say
Qingtong was
anything.
about to pay,
Otherwise,
he waved his hand and
if the
said,
Sky Wind
"Forget
Inscription
it.
City Lord
You're just
had
a little
spoken,
girl," and insisted
forget
on
about this
entering
bit
the
of medicine
inscription
money.
tower. The
It's
bet
not a big
between
deal.
Luo Qingtong
As he spoke,
and
he
Lung
sighed
Yu
and said,
Inscription City Lord
"Sigh,
would not
this
have been
Heavenly Wind
established.
Inscription City
However,
might be
he was
disbanded
willing
tomorrow.
to give Song Cheng this
My
opportunity.
pharmacy might not be
Let
able
him
to
continue
continue place.
operating at that
This
time.
disciple of
After
his,
all,
who had
the
zero
other
inscription
inscription
talent,
cities don't have
had
a good
always
person
been very
like old
sincere
City
to
Lord
him.
Zhang.
The Heavenly
A
Wind
small shop
Inscription
like ours
City
can
Lord
only
didn't want
survive
his
in a place
sincere
like
heart to
Heavenly
be
Wind
wasted.
Inscription City.
Therefore, he had been
If it was
silent
any
the
other
entire
inscription
time.
city, when
It would
Luo
have long been
Qingtong
swallowed
and
up
the
by
others
those
entered
rich
the
and overbearing
overbearing
shops.
shops. The people of Lung Yu in the pharmacy
City
waved his hand
had
and
already
said,
reached the first
seeing
floor
that it's not
and
easy
was
for a
close
little
to the
girl like
second
you.
floor.
I'll
Standing on the
doing a good
stairs,
deed
Master
today.
Chen,
Who had
after
been
all,
hiding among the
if we can
inscription
open for one
masters
more
of Lung
day,
Yu
it's one more
Inscription
day.
City.
Suddenly
As the
spoke,
shopkeeper of the
who allowed
pharmacy
you to
spoke,
act
he
on
sighed
your own
heavily.
just now.
A small shop
When he
like theirs
spoke,
couldn't be
Lung Yu
compared to a big
Inscription
shop.
City Lord's heart
A big
skipped a
shop had
beat.
an alchemist overseeing it, so they could do well wherever they went. However, a small shop
Chapter
like theirs,
2300.
once they left the
Only
place
then
where
did
they
he
grew
remember
up
that
and
there
went
was
to
still a
another
great
city,
Buddha and his team.
it would be very easy
Originally,
for them to be squeezed
Master
out
Chen
of
was very
existence by
dissatisfied
others.
that he had
Not
agreed
to
to
mention
the bet
that
with
the
Song
other
Cheng
cities
without
weren't as
permission,
benevolent as
causing
Heavenly
them to
Wind
delay the
Inscription
inscription
Tower for 3
with the
years.
Heavenly Wind Inscription
Now he had been
City
provoked by Song
protecting
Cheng's
them.
disciple
If they were
make
to
a
go
bet
to
with
another
them.
place,
As Lung
even
Yu
if they were to
Inscription
take
City
root,
Lord thought
it
about
would be very
Cold
easy for
sweat
others to
instantly dripped
maliciously
down his
squeeze
forehead and swallow them up. He looked
Thus,
at Master Chen
the
and
shopkeeper
stuttered.
of the pharmacy
However, he quickly
had already
found a
made
suitable
preparations
excuse for this to be the
Master
last day
Chen,
of business.
I wanted to
He
vent
looked
your
at
anger
Luo
for you.
Qingtong, who was wearing
After
a veil
finding a
hat
reason,
and waved his hand.
Lung Yu Inscription
All right,
City
little
Lord
girl,
hurriedly
let's go.
said.
Luo
Look,
Qingtong
that Zhang
smiled when she
Tianhong
heard
didn't
this.
know how to
She
appreciate
didn't
favors.
insist on paying.
This inscription
and only
tower
took out
should
something
have fallen
from her
into our
trash hands
hands
and placed
he would
it on the
rather
counter.
self-destruct the
Uncle,
inscription
don't
mark
worry.
in his body
Heavenly
than
Wind
admit
Inscription
defeat.
City won't
He
fall.
even almost injured
She
you.
turned around and left.
How can I tolerate
Hearing
this?
The
As he
shopkeeper
spoke,
of the
he
pharmacy
smiled at
was
Master
stunned
Chen
for a
and
moment.
said,
Master
Then,
Chen,
he
don't
smiled
worry.
and shook
I
his
put
head
in a
as
lot
he
of
looked
effort
at
into
Luo
this bet.
Qingtong's departing figure.
With that Song Cheng,
Little girl, you're
not
too
to mention
naive.
defeating me.
The shopkeeper
Even
of
if
the
any of
pharmacy
my
didn't take
inscription
Luo
apprentices
Qingtong's
came
words
out
to heart.
They might be
The
able
other
to crush
party
him.
probably
You
wasn't
really
from
don't have to
Heavenly
worry
Wind
about
Inscription
this.
City.
As his
Otherwise,
words rang
he
out,
would not know how
Master
powerful
Chen
Cold
snorted
Jade
coldly
Inscription
and
City
didn't
was.
say anything.
The other party
He
should
indeed
have
knew that
taken
it was
away the
impossible with
inscription
Song
tower
Cheng
3
strength.
years ago.
If it
And
wasn't
Heavenly
for this,
Wind
he
Inscription
wouldn't have
City
remained silent
should have been
and allowed
disbanded
Lung
at
Yu
that time.
Inscription City Lord
Sai, I hope a
Luo
miracle.
Qingtong, as he
And
spoke,
the others to make
his
the
gaze
bet.
suddenly landed
spoke
on the
now
things
because
that
he was
Luo Qingtong
dissatisfied
had
that
placed
Lung
on the
Yu
counter.
Inscription City
Then
Lord
he was
didn't
stunned
inform him.
and made the decision
He
on
looked
his
at
own.
a prescription
It
on the
wasn't
counter
that he
to
was
the counter to be a
dissatisfied with this
prescription.
bet.
On
On
the
the
contrary,
the steps
he
to
was very
concoct this
satisfied.
medicinal liquid were written in detail.
If Zhang Tianhong
didn't know how to appreciate
from when
favors,
to add the herbs,
he would have
when to
obtained
start
the
the
item
fusion,
in the inscription
and what
tower
color
15
represented
years
the
ago.
success of the fusion.
Let's go.
All
Just
of it was
as Lung
very
Yu
clear.
Inscription City
It could
Lord
be
was
said
holding
that
his
as long
breath
as there was
and
this
didn't dare to
prescription,
breathe loudly,
even an ignorant
Master
person
Chen
would be able
snorted
to
coldly
refine the
and
medicinal
walked
liquid
directly
on the
to the
prescription second floor of the inscription tower. The first floor of the
He
inscription
knew
tower
very well in his
wasn't
heart
used for fighting.
that even an
It was
alchemist who
meaningless
had
to
already
fight with
become
the
a
people of
grandmaster
Tianfeng
might not
inscription
be
city
able to
here.
take out such a
Moreover,
prescription.
the outcome
The
of the
shopkeeper of
inscription
the
tower
pharmacy
was
thought with
determined
his
by
mouth
who could
wide
climb the
open
highest
and hurriedly
stay
rushed
the
out.
longest in the
However,
inscription
at this
tower.
time,
Master
there was no
Chen
trace
was
of
already
Luo
impatient
Qingtong
to
on
beat
the
around the
street.
bush with
The
the
young
people
girl
of
had
Heavenly
already
Wind
left after
Inscription
leaving
City.
the pharmacy.
He wanted to
That
directly
prescription
obtain
was
the
just one of the
inscription tower
prescriptions
and let the
that she had
people of
casually
Heavenly Wind
taken out
Inscription
from the
City
empire of
know
Qing's
that their
Academy of
resistance was
Medicine
futile.
students.
Back then, she had used this
when
method
Lung
to
Yu
deal with the
Inscription City
students of
Lord
the
heard
Academy
this,
of Medicine
he immediately
and had
heaved a
written
sigh of
countless
relief.
prescriptions.
He quickly wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and followed.
For some reason,
Chapter
he was
22
afraid of
85.
Master Chen.
After
He had a feeling that
went
Master
back,
Chen
she
was
prepared
not
to
as
start
simple as
refining
he appeared
pills.
to be.
She set
If
up
she had
layers of
listened to
arrays
him,
in her room.
she might have been
After
able to
making
ensure
sure
her
that no one
safety.
could disturb her while she was refining pills.
If he disobeyed the other party,
cauldron from
it wouldn't be difficult for the other party to change cauldron had been in Luo Qingtong's waist ring
Although
for
this
a long
feeling
time.
had no basis,
With Luo Qingtong's previous
inexplicably,
alchemy
cold
strength,
jade inscription
she no
city,
longer needed
Lord
to use
felt
the
that
square
his
immortal
intuition
cauldron
wouldn't
to
be
refine
wrong.
pills.
That was why he was so cautious when dealing with Master Chen,
and
he
could
was
not
afraid
open her
that the
blood
other
eye.
party would
To
blame
refine
him.
an excellent
The group entered the
enlightenment
second
spirit
floor.
pill.
At
Without
this
wasting
moment,
the medicinal
Luo
power,
Qingtong,
she
and
naturally
the others
needed
were
to
walking
use the
towards the
square
entrance
entrance
of
of
the
the
stairs
stairs
from the
Only
first
this
floor
immortal
to the
cauldron
second
could
floor.
accurately control the
However,
furnace fire inside.
when Luo Qingtong had no strength and refined the medicinal power of the medicinal herbs,
They had only
inside
walked
just
100
right.
meters on the
Luo
first floor.
Qingtong placed
When
the
they saw
medicinal
Song
herbs
Cheng's
she
face
bought from
turn
the
pale.
pharmacy into
The
the
rules
square
of the
immortal
inscription
cauldron
tower were very
and made
strange.
a seal with her hand.
The tower battle
In an
was
instant,
also very different.
The entire pill
It
furnace
wasn't a
lit
fight
up to the
fiercely.
death the moment
The
they
raging
entered.
flames inside
Instead, they had to
soared up.
continuously climb
There was
the
no
tower.
need for Luo
Whoever
Qingtong
reached
to
the
use
highest
any of her
floor
strength
and stayed there for
according
the
to the
longest
steps
time would
of
be the
refining
winner.
the enlightenment
Of course,
spirit
it wasn't
pill.
that simple.
Luo Qingtong
This was because the
added
process
medicinal
of climbing the
herbs she
tower
needed
could
bit
be
by bit.
destroyed.
Under
Both
her
parties
precise
could
control,
attack each other
even
while
without
climbing
the
the
help
tower.
of her blood eye.
Not only that,
Luo
during the
Qingtong
process
still
of climbing
succeeded
and
in refining
refining
the
the
enlightenment
pressure and
spirit
aura
pill.
of the tower,
It was just
would
that the
constantly
retention
suppress
rate of the
and obstruct
medicinal
them.
power
This
was
pressure
not as
and
good
aura was
as
also
when
the
Luo
source of
Qingtong
power for
opened
the
her blood
inscription
eye.
mark.
But it was
Only
still
those who could
90%.
withstand the pressure
Luo
and aura
Qingtong
of the
looked very
inscription tower
satisfied.
would be
After
able
all,
to use the
the
power
pills
of
on
the
the market
inscription
that
tower
reached
for
this
their
level
own use.
were already
The higher
considered
they
top
went,
grade.
the stronger
Above
the
that
pressure,
level,
and the less
even
power
alchemy
they could
grandmasters
use
would
from
not
the
dare to
inscription
say
tower.
that they were confident.
At that time,
Of course,
it would depend
if
on
Luo
whose
Qingtong
attainments
opened
in
her
the
blood
inscription
eye,
technique
she
were
would be able
deeper.
to achieve
They would be able to
100%
resist the
retention
pressure
rate
and
in
use
that
more
case,
power to
the
injure the
medicinal
other
effect
party
would be even
and
better.
expel them from the
But
tower.
now 90%
Those who
was
were
already
injured
very
would not
good.
be able to
It was
withstand
enough
the
for
pressure
Luo
of the
Qingtong
inscription
to fully
tower
comprehend the
and would
spirit
be
chi
expelled
before
from the
tomorrow.
tower.
Draw
This
the
was the
spirit
true
chi
meaning
into
of
her
the
body
tower
again
battle of the
and recover
inscription
her
tower.
strength.
At this
Luo
moment,
Qingtong took out
Song
the
Cheng was
enlightenment
enduring
spirit
the
pill
pressure
from
and
the square
aura of the
immortal
inscription
cauldron
tower
and swallowed
His
it.
voice was panting.
Boom.
As
His
soon
face
as
was
the
as white as
medicinal pill
paper.
entered her body,
Among the group,
the medicinal
the
power
weakest
inside
inside
began to
techniques
circulate throughout Luo
Therefore,
Qingtong's
the
limbs
moment
and
he
body.
entered the first
As
floor
the
of
medicinal
the
effects
tower,
flowed through Luo
he felt an
Qingtong's
extremely
body.
strong
She
pressure.
sat down cross-legged.
The first floor of
and
the
carefully
inscription
sensed
tower
the spiritual
was not
aura
for
around
inscription
her.
masters
Under
to
the
fight.
effect of these
It was
medicinal
for
herbs,
inscription masters
Luo
who had just
Qingtong
entered the
sensitivity
inscription
to the
tower
surroundings
to adapt
energy
and familiarize
greatly
themselves with the
The
rules and
enlightenment
aura
spirit
of the
pill
tower.
was used to help
Generally
martial
speaking,
artists open
as
up their
long as an
meridians
inscription
and
master had
increase
some
their
talent,
perception of
it
spirit
wouldn't be a
chi.
problem to
From
pass
there,
the first floor.
they would be able to
However,
draw spirit
Song
chi
Cheng's
into their
inscription
bodies
talent was
and
too
step
weak.
onto the path
He
of
had already done
cultivation.
his best.
A single
But he was
enlightenment
still
spirit
crawling
pill
on
was
the
enough
spot
to
like a
allow
turtle.
ordinary people
A group
to
of
ignore the
people from
difference in
Heavenly
talent.
Wind Inscription City
Looked at him worriedly.
It allowed those
a
who did not
disciple
have
of Heavenly
talent
Wind Inscription
and could
City
not
Lord
sense the
advised.
existence of
Junior
spiritual
brother
energy
Cheng,
around them
why
to
don't you
become
just
warriors.
admit defeat and leave?
As for Luo
Don't
Qingtong's
worry, we
enlightenment
won't
spirit
blame you.
pill,
Yes,
it was an
Junior brother
enhanced
Cheng,
version of an
you have
ordinary
already done your
enlightenment
best.
spirit pill.
Don't force
As
yourself
soon as this
anymore.
enlightenment
If you
spirit pill
continue
entered
like
her
this,
mouth,
you'll be
the
heavily
attributes
injured
and
by the
types
aura
of the
of the
spirit
inscription
chi
tower.
were completely
No.
presented in front
Song
of
Cheng
Luo
shook his head.
Qingtong.
He wouldn't
Luo
allow himself
Qingtong
to be so
circulated the
useless
lowest
and weak.
level of martial
He wouldn't
artist
even give it a
entry-level
try
techniques
before admitting
and
defeat.
slowly drew the
This was
spirit
the first
chi
time Song
that was
Cheng had
suitable
entered
for
the
martial
inscription
artists to
tower.
cultivate into her body.
As for the spirit
He
chi
wasn't
that
an
was not
inscription
suitable
master
for martial
before,
artists to
so
cultivate,
naturally,
she
he couldn't
excluded
enter
it.
the inscription
This
tower.
process would normally
Now that
take
he
a
had
few
learned
months
some inscription
or
techniques,
even a year for
he was
talented
able to
martial
enter the
artists.
inscription tower.
With the help of the
However,
enlightenment
he
spirit
didn't
pill,
expect that it would
Luo
be so
Qingtong
difficult
could
for
easily
him
distinguish
the
the
spirit
spirit
tower
chi
and
Every
draw it
step
into
was
her
an
body very
obstacle,
quickly.
and every step was like there were countless iron plates in front of him, blocking
Chapter
his
2286.
While Song
The
Cheng
spirit
gritted
chi
his
entered
teeth
Luo
and walked
Qingtong's
forward.
body.
Luo
Soon,
Qingtong,
the cultivation
was also feeling the
technique in Luo
suppressive aura
Qingtong's
in the
body was
inscription
activated.
tower.
This
It quickly
suppressive
carried
aura
the spirit
came from
chi
the top
around
of the
in
tower.
Luo Qingtong's
He
body.
could feel that the
One
pressure
round,
on the
two
first
rounds,
level wasn't
rounds,
especially strong.
36 rounds.
As long as one had
After
a bit
one
of
round
talent
of
in
circulation
inscription
patterns,
Luo
they would
Qingtong's
be able
energy
to
center
survive.
produced a strand of
Furthermore,
power.
he was
Boom.
able to gain
The
strength
moment
from
this
this
strand of
oppressive
power
aura.
appeared,
After
Luo
Luo Qingtong
Qingtong
withstood
spirit
the
chi
pressure,
and medicinal
she
power
found that
were
she could
mobilized.
use the power of the
Soon,
aura.
the spirit chi in the girl's body became stronger and stronger. The spirit chi circulation in her body also became faster and faster. As Luo Qingtong's fingertip landed, countless energy auras surged out from the first floor of the inscription tower in the sea and rushed into the inscription pattern drawn by Luo Waves of dragon and tiger roars were emitted from her body. The inscription pattern drawn by Luo wave was louder than the previous one and kept spinning in the air. And each wave followed the previous one. As Luo Qingtong's fingertips trembled violently due to the thunderous sound of the tide of power dissipated into nothingness. As expected, the aura in the inscription tower can form a pattern stronger and stronger. In the next second, curled up slightly. The spirit chi her bright eyes were shining brightly at this moment. In an instant, her eyes, countless which were like the stars in all directions, were pulsing with a blood-red light. The entire room Ever since she entered the holy venerable realm that Song Cheng had specially was able to control the blood-red light in her eyes. Would not be able to destroy this flickered in the deepest part of her eyes. Array formation ordinary that people couldn't see it set up. Only when the peak of the holy venerate extremely excited. I'm about to step into the venerate realm. Would her blood-red eyes reveal themselves and held her hand. Otherwise, she felt the surging power in her body. Luo Qingtong's blood-red eyes would have been treated as a monster. And this time, of course, she had the reason why her special ability was exposed back. And then was because her blood-red eyes were too shocking when they were awakened. Although she was still a little short. But it was different after coming to this alternate world. The people here only thought she had already reached this level. Were a little strange. It was only a matter of time before she entered the venerate realm. Therefore, the absorption of her spirit deliberately hide her brought her many benefits in the past. In comparison, in addition, temporarily strong enough her spirit chi for a period of time. Even if she wanted to hide it, and being called trash was no big deal. Why would she be hunted down for so many years in the 24th century? She looked up at the sky outside. Her blood-red eyes seeing that it was still dark. Now that Luo immediately raised her hand increased to the holy venerate realm, the square immortal cauldron. The power of her blood-red eyes had also increased. Just as she was about to move, Luo Qingtong suddenly control the color of her eyes. Place in her subconscious told her that unless it was necessary, Luo shouldn't reveal her unique blood-red eyes in the immortal cauldron. Because Luo Qingtong's ocular ability was close to mastery, was the blood-red light in her eyes became brighter and brighter. When was no longer misty and blood-red like mortal cauldron, it was an extremely beautiful red jade was color. Extraordinary. The current Luo Qingtong's pupils was not strong enough at that time, even if she didn't use her ocular ability. Cauldron like a red agate. She forgot about the cauldron immortal cauldron. It was also now that she saw that place again. It was very easy to expose one's identity if it was too iconic. Luo Qingtong knew at this that time. Her previous her spirit chi was too weak. She looked towards the top of the tower with the blood-red light, or even close to it. The suppressive aura was the strongest among them. Immortal cauldron Luo Qingtong could faintly feel that there seemed to be something with bloody light was attracting her. Strange. She set the square immortal cauldron in front of her in the inscription and carefully examined it. Luo Qingtong her bloody eyes there was a faint restlessness in her body and felt strange. Could it be because of her inscription talent? Chapter 2287. Bang! Luo Qingtong struck the seal in her brows as she thought about it. Slapped the sun-moon mountain river diagram of the square heavy muffled sound suddenly came from beside her. Waves of white light who knelt on the ground, sweating profusely. The aura of these white lights was very powerful, the pressure of the first level of the wandered around the square immortal cauldron. And they were only close to the stairs to the second level. Hindered. They hadn't even touched the light in her eyes flickered. Sweat fell from Song Cheng's forehead like a waterfall, of these white drenching his entire body. Out 2 more times. His legs were trembling. In an instant, but he couldn't get up no matter what. The aura of this divine cauldron suddenly flourished. Inscription then in the next second, his master were on his shoulders. The entire cauldron suddenly rotated from nearly 1/3 of the top of the cauldron. Why was his inscription the entire cauldron so split into 2 halves in an instant, revealing a space that looked like a mezzanine. The amazing thing was that Chapter this space clearly existed in the cauldron. Junior brother. But before the moment Song Cheng opened down, she couldn't see the existence of heavenly wind inscription in the entire square all gathered around him. At this moment, Song Cheng, the mezzanine of the divine cauldron opened as he desperately tried to stand up. Could see the appearance of this space. Junior brother, illusory form pill? You have already done very well. Luo Qingtong looked at the pill formula that was revealed. Junior brother, and raised her hand to take it out. Any longer. At the same time, no one will blame you. There was a medicinal herb that emitted an extremely strong medicinal power and heavenly wind inscription. The medicinal power contained in this medicinal herb was so strong that it almost forced people here had looked down on Song Cheng before. One had to know that he had
aura
lost
of
faith
medicinal
for
power
heavenly
was the
wind
softest.
inscription city.
Under normal
now,
circumstances,
they looked at the
it
man
didn't have
who was
any
being
offensive
suppressed
power.
by the pressure of
However,
the inscription
the
tower.
medicinal power
Until his
emitted by
bones
the
were
medicinal
creaking.
herb in
It
front
was
of
as if he could be
Luo
crushed into
was
powder
actually
at any
like
time.
an exposed
There
sword
was only
aura,
respect in
full
their
of
hearts.
offensive power
A person's
and pressure.
degree of respect
It could be
was
seen
not
that the
determined
grade
by
of this
talent
medicinal
or
herb was
aptitude.
very high.
That was too
It
shallow.
was definitely not
Even
an
if
ordinary
Song Cheng
item.
was still a waste,
Could it be a
he was
divine
still a
item
waste
of
that
heaven
they
and earth?
respected.
Everyone tried to
looked at this
persuade him,
medicinal herb,
but Song
and
Cheng
guessed in her
refused to
heart.
give up.
In this
If
world,
he was a person
there
who
were
gave
some
up so
top-grade
easily,
medicinal herbs
he wouldn't
that
have
were
spent
born
nearly
naturally,
12 years in the
regardless
true
of
spill
grade or
continent,
medicinal power.
just for that last
They were not
glimmer of
comparable
hope
to
breaking
ordinary
through.
high-grade
If he
medicinal
didn't have
herbs,
that last glimmer
these
of
medicinal
perseverance,
herbs already contained
perhaps he wouldn't have met
spirituality.
Luo Qingtong.
There were even medicinal
herbs that
give
were
up.
tens of
Song
millions
Cheng
of years
stood up
old
with a bang
that could
At the same
transform into
time,
a human form.
The powerful pressure
were
of the
extremely
inscription
rare.
tower
Of
fiercely
course,
bombarded his
just
body.
like plants that have
If
turned
one's
into
inscription
spirits,
skills were
it
not
was
strong
extremely
enough,
difficult for these
forcefully
medicinal
resisting the
herbs
pressure
to
of the
cultivate
inscription
into a
tower
human form
would only
However,
lead to the most
the spirituality
terrible
in their
result.
bodies
His
was
bones
innate.
would be crushed
It
by
could
the
be said that
inscription
they were
tower
blessed
and
by the
thrown out.
heavens. Just as
Luo
the pressure of
Qingtong
the
looked at this
inscription tower
medicinal
was
herb
about to hit
and
Song
secretly
Cheng's body,
guessed whether this
a jade
medicinal
white
herb
hand
was
landed
such a
on
divine
Song
item of
Cheng's
heaven
shoulder.
and earth or not.
Xie, however,
Seeing
upon
Luo
closer
Qingtong's hand
inspection,
on Song Cheng's
this
shoulder,
medicinal herb
the
seemed
other
to be only a
inscription
small
masters
section.
of heavenly wind
Even if it was a
inscription
divine
city
item of
suddenly
heaven and
shouted.
earth, their voices
It would
were
only
filled
be a
with
small
panic.
part of its body.
Quick, let go of him. It's
It
impossible
contained
to
a
resist
limited
the
amount
pressure
of
here.
spirituality.
It's also
and it
impossible
couldn't be
to help
cultivated.
others resist it.
As Luo Qingtong
Otherwise,
thought of
they
this,
would be
she
suppressed by
frowned
the
and felt a
inscription
little
tower and
regretful.
thrown out.
At this moment,
that
she
time,
heard little pigs.
both of them would suffer together.
Blood-weeping
A
parasol
group
tree?
of inscription masters from Heavenly Wind Inscription
Little
City
pigs
cried
stared
out
at the
in alarm
herb that looked like a
and
dried-up
hurriedly
twig.
asked Luo
The other
Qingtong
party's
to
branches
release
were
Song
thick
Cheng.
and strong.
However,
twisting
Luo
and turning in a
Qingtong turned a
spiral.
deaf ear to them.
Looking at it, the
There was a
blood-red
kind of
pupils in her
majestic
eyes
and
spun,
boundless aura,
and she could
was
easily see that the oppressive aura around
on,
Song Cheng
on,
had already weakened,
on.
turning into
Holy
a power
shit.
that he could use.
Holy shit.
Song Cheng had
This is the
broken
true
through
blood
under
of
the
a
pressure.
phoenix that has
He had
successfully
officially
become
become
an
an
Nirvana.
inscription master, and was no longer an inscription apprentice. Who? Chapter
Luo
2288
Qingtong
supported Song Cheng.
The blood-weeping
The latter was
parasol
already
tree
gasping for breath.
the true blood
He was
of a
so
phoenix
weak that he almost
had
fell to the
successfully
ground.
undergone nirvana.
The phoenix itself was already an ancient
Luo
divine
Qingtong
beast.
looked at the
After
nervous and
successfully
surprised people
undergoing
from
nirvana,
Heavenly Wind
it was
Inscription
close
City
to the
and
level
said,
of a divine
Martial
beast of
uncles
heaven
and
and
seniors,
earth.
please
Even
go
the
up
realm
first.
beast, which
Don't
was
let the
born and
people
nurtured
from
by
Lung
the
Yu
heavens and
Inscription
earth,
City take the lead.
was the heavenly
My
Dao's
master
favorite,
and I will take
could
a
be
rest on
compared
the
to
first
it.
floor.
A phoenix that
All
had
right.
successfully
The group of
undergone
inscription
nirvana
masters
was
from
equivalent
Heavenly
to
Wind
surpassing
Inscription
the
City
level of an
also
ancient
saw
divine
that
beast
Song Cheng seemed
and
to have
reaching a
broken
whole
through.
new realm.
They sighed
Who
in
would
their
have
hearts
thought that the
They
blood-weeping
did not
parasol
expect Song
tree
Cheng's
actually
willpower to be
contained the
so
true
shocking.
blood of a phoenix
He actually
that
broke
had
through to the
successfully
level of a
undergone
beginner
nirvana.
inscription
If it was
master
refined
in the
into a
inscription
pill and
tower
swallowed
with such poor
the person
talent.
would immediately
However,
obtain
that
the
was
power
all.
of the raging
It was
true
basically
fire
impossible
that
for
was
Song
comparable
Cheng
to
to
step
step
into the
into
second floor.
Moreover,
because it was inherited from a phoenix that had successfully undergone nirvana. The power
Chapter
of the raging true
2304.
fire
Thinking
was even
about
greater
this,
than any
everyone
fire
sighed in
element
their
power
hearts.
in the world. If Song
Sigh.
Cheng's inscription
It's a pity
talent
that
wasn't
there's
that
too
bad,
little true
and
blood
was
of
just
a
a little
phoenix in it.
stronger. It's not
Even
enough
if
to
it was
form
only
a pill.
mediocre inscription
Little
talent.
Pig was excited
With
when
his
he discovered that the
perseverance,
blood-weeping
he would definitely
parasol
be
tree
able to achieve
contained
great
very
things.
little true
Who
blood
knows
of a
how
phoenix.
powerful an
There
inscription
was only
master
a little on the
he would
surface
become
of
in
the
the
blood-weeping
future.
parasol
What a
tree.
pity, what a pity.
And the insides
Everyone
weren't
shook their
soaked.
heads and
Even
felt
if this
pity in their
true
hearts.
blood of a phoenix
At
was
the
refined,
same time,
it
they
still
nodded
wasn't
in
enough to
agreement
form a
with
pill.
Luo Qingtong's
What
words.
a pity. The
Little
young
Pig's
man's
excited
right.
expression
At this
instantly
moment,
disappeared
the
when
members
he
of
thought
Lung
of
Yu
this.
City
What
were
the hell
already
was
a
worse
step
than
ahead.
seeing a treasure?
If they were allowed to
only
ascend to the
discover
higher
that it was
levels
just
of the
an empty
inscription
shell
tower
when you
ahead of
eagerly
time
rushed up to
and
it.
stay there
You
for
could
a
only look
sufficient
at it
amount
to
of time,
satisfy your craving.
then they would lose
but
for
couldn't
sure.
use it.
No one
Little
was willing
Pig's
to
ears,
lose to the
which had been
inscription
raised
tower.
up,
Instantly
if they
drooped
still
down
lost
like
the
a
frosted
frosted tower in
eggplant.
the end.
On the other
They
hand,
would still give it a
Luo
try with all
Qingtong
their
glanced
strength.
at the blood-weeping
Thus,
parasol
after
tree.
hearing Luo
Before
Qingtong's
looking at
words,
the pill recipe
they
in her
immediately
hand.
asked Luo
Then,
Qingtong
her lips curled
to
up
take
as she
care of
said,
Song Cheng.
"That's right,"
and persuade him
I'm
to
afraid
stop
this
trying to be
blood-weeping
brave.
parasol tree
Then they
isn't
chased up
used
to
to
the
refine
higher
the
levels.
pill you mentioned.
After the people
It's
from
used to
heavenly
refine
wind
the
illusory
inscription
city
pill.
left. As she
Luo
spoke,
Qingtong
she handed the
helped
pill
Song Cheng
recipe
sit
in
on
her
the
hand to
stairs
Little
from the
Pig.
first level
Little
to the
Pig
second
caught
level.
the pill recipe
Master,
with his 2 little hooves
after
and
Luo
glanced at
Qingtong
it.
helped Song
Then
Cheng
his
sit
eyes
on the
widened.
stairs.
She
Holy
immediately
crap,
spoke.
this person,
however,
is a genius.
Just as she opened her
Just
mouth,
who was the one
she
who
was
developed
interrupted
this
by
pill?
Song Cheng.
It's 2F
If you want to
king.
persuade me to give
Awesome,
up, then forget
Little
it.
Pig's eyes
Song
widened
Cheng
as he
waved his
looked
hand
at the pill
weakly.
recipe's
Disciple,
introduction.
Master
the words
can do
written on it
anything
were,
you want.
illusory form
Just
pill
this point
origin
alone
pill.
won't do.
It can be
Don't
infused
worry
with
about
the
me.
blood
Go
of
up with
spirit
them.
beasts of
Don't let
heaven
the
and
people
earth.
from Lung Yu
And
City
after
succeed.
consuming it,
Even
it
if
can
he really
transform
failed
into
in
the
the end,
original form
at least
of a
the
spirit
inscription
beast.
tower would be
Depending
preserved.
on the strength of
It
the
was a pity
medicinal
that the
herbs
people from
and the
Heavenly
level of
Wind
the
Inscription
transformed
City
spirit beast
and his master
one
would
could
be
obtain
unlucky
lucky
with
with
him.
him.
To
As Song
one-fifth
Ching
of the
thought about
transformed
this,
spirit
his heart
beast's
felt
strength.
sour.
At
At
this
this
moment
moment,
was 1
Luo
hour.
Qingtong's
Oh my
voice
God.
sounded.
You're thinking too much, Master. This
Luo
illusionary
Qingtong
form
was
pill
in a
was
bad
simply
mood.
awesome to the heavens.
Do I look like the kind
No
of
wonder
person
there was
who
a
would
blood
persuade me
weeping
to give
parasol
up?
tree beside
She was
this
the kind
pill
of
formula
person who would never
Didn't
give
this
up on
mean
something she
that if
wanted
Luo
to do.
Qingtong was
I just
able
want
to
to ask
refine the
you,
medicinal
do you believe
pills
in
on the
me?
list?
As soon
With
as
the
Luo
true blood of the
Qingtong's words
phoenix
came
from the
out,
blood-weeping
Song Ching
parasol
immediately
tree
looked up at
she
her.
could transform
Disciple,
into the appearance
his
of the
voice was
phoenix
trembling.
that had successfully
You have a way to
undergone
help me.
nirvana.
Help me.
And possessed
He
at
stuttered
least
for a long
1/10
time,
of its original
but couldn't
strength.
say the last
F
word.
asterisk CK.
He was afraid that
was
this was
awesome.
just an
Little
unrealistic
Pig's eyes were
fantasy
wide open.
and an illusion.
A phoenix's
but
true
he also
body
wanted
that
to
had
believe that this
successfully
was the hope
undergone
that
nirvana.
Luo Qingtong gave
If
him.
it was one of the best
When
in the
Luo
Phoenix
Qingtong,
clan,
Luo
it would have
Qingtong,
strength
Luo
that was not
Qingtong,
inferior
Luo
to its true
Qingtong
body.
had asked Luo
Wow,
Qingtong,
what
Luo
the F
Qingtong.
asterisk CK?
Luo
Did that woman Feng
Luo
Luan know what kind of treasure she had given to his master? She probably didn't know otherwise. She would have vomited blood and died from anger.
Ha ha ha.
She watched
Little
as his
Pig
lips
laughed
trembled
as he thought about
but he
it.
just couldn't open his mouth. Luo Qingtong was both angry and amused. Chapter 2289. But soon, it smacked its lips and said regretfully,
Was there a need to be so exaggerated and nervous?
The aura of this blood-weeping
parasol
parasol
tree
tree
is
is
too
too strong. If you're
With your
willing,
current
nod
strength,
your head or blink
you
your
still
eyes.
can't refine the true
If you're not
phoenix
willing
blood
to
in it.
believe in me,
She would only
then
have
you
a
don't
chance
have to
when
do
she
anything.
reached the human
As
martial
soon as
realm.
Luo Qingtong
After
said
all,
this,
Song
the
Ching's
true
eyes
phoenix
almost
blood
flew
was
out.
extremely powerful and contained the will of the true phoenix fire. Moreover, it was the blood of a phoenix
Chapter
that had successfully
2305.
undergone
Luo
nirvana.
Qingtong's lips
A single
twitched.
drop was enough
She
to
really
burn
didn't know
mountains
what to
and
say.
overturn seas.
Her master was good
However,
at everything.
that was
But
the blood
sometimes,
essence of a
when he made a
phoenix's heart.
mistake,
It was
the blood in the
unbearable.
parasol tree
Wasn't
was
it just
only
the
the
sporadic
sentence
blood
was
that
there a
was
need to
spat
make
out
him so
when the
nervous?
phoenix underwent
However,
nirvana?
Luo
It didn't
Qingtong
possess
didn't
that
know
kind
that
of
to Song
power.
Cheng.
Otherwise,
It was the salvation
not to
of the
mention
entire
human
martial
inscription
realm.
city. Even if
Quick,
Luo
quick,
Qingtong
quick.
broke through to the
Disciple,
sky
do
martial
you have any
realm,
way to help me?
she might not be
Tell
able
me
to
quickly.
refine the true phoenix
After a
blood
long
in
while.
it. This
Song
was
Cheng
based on the
regained his
fact that
senses,
Luo
and
Qingtong's
hurriedly
tyrannical
grabbed
strength
Luo
far
Qingtong and
surpassed
asked.
ordinary sky
His
martial
inscription
realm
talent was
experts.
poor,
And the
If he
assistance
wanted
of
to
the
win,
blood eye,
he had
if
to
it was
raise
an
his
ordinary
inscription
sky martial
technique
realm
to
expert,
the level of a
just
senior
touching the
inscription
true phoenix
master.
blood would burn
However,
them to ashes.
although Lung Yu
let
City
alone
Lord's
refining
strength
it.
wasn't as strong
Therefore,
as Tianfeng
even
City
if there was
Lord,
a heavenly treasure,
it wasn't a problem
one
for him
needed
to
the
deal with the
corresponding
other
strength to
six-star
possess
regions.
it. Now
Song
the
Cheng
sporadic
really
blood
couldn't
in
think
the
of any way
blood-weeping
that
parasol
Luo
tree
Qingtong
was
could
just
help
right.
him.
Even
When
if
Luo
Luo
Qingtong's
Qingtong
strength
was an
increased,
immortal, she could
she
refine
couldn't
it
possibly
into a pill.
turn herself
At
from a
that
trash
time,
into a high-level
Luo Qingtong's
inscriptionist
trump card
in
would
such
be
a short
unimaginably
period of time.
great.
Right?
She would be able to
She
do
could
whatever
even be
she
one of
wanted
the
in
best
this
high-level
starry sky and
inscriptionists.
countless star
In
fields.
fact,
Little
Song
Pig
Cheng
was
had completely
overjoyed when he thought of
underestimated
this.
Luo Qingtong.
The stronger Luo
Who said that she
Qingtong
couldn't
was,
do it.
the more cocky
In the
he
past,
could be. She might
when he
not
thought
have
of
been
how
able
he
to
could
do
do whatever he
but
wanted,
now,
even if
after
he
she
couldn't recover
recovered
the
her
power
strength,
of his
she
original
used some
body
time
for the
to
time
sort out
being,
and
he
improve
was
her eye
overjoyed
technique.
and completely
It was also
forgot
because
about his
of this that
previous
Luo
state.
Qingtong
Came a
came a
little
little
late
master
at
this
the
is a good
inscription
treasure.
plaza.
Quickly
Because
put
she
it
had
away.
activated a new
Little
eye
Pig
technique
said to Luo
in
Qingtong
Luo
with glowing
Qingtong's
eyes.
previous life.
They couldn't
This
lose
eye
such a good
technique was
treasure.
of little value
After
to her.
all, of
Where would
course,
they
it
find
wasn't
the
completely
truly
useless.
blood
If it
It
wasn't
still
in
helped
this
Luo
cauldron,
Qingtong a little.
even if they found
When she
other
was building
spiritual
her own
beasts,
secret power
could
and
their
business
strength
empire,
compare to the true
it came in
phoenix
handy.
blood of the true
But
phoenix?
it was only a little.
What a joke.
In that world,
Even if they could
Luo
refine a
Qingtong
pill that
didn't
could
really
activate
trust
50%
and was willing
of the
to
true
nurture
phoenix's
anyone.
original body
But this
strength.
world was different.
It wouldn't be
Luo
as powerful
Qingtong
as
looked at
1%
Song
of
Cheng
the
and
true
said,
phoenix's
Master, look into my
strength.
eyes.
Little
Later,
Pig felt
no
smug in
matter
his
what
heart.
appears in your
Luo
mind, don't
Qingtong was
resist it.
naturally aware of
The
the
moment
benefits
Luo Qingtong
said
After
that,
looking
Song
through the
Cheng's
pill
expression
formula for the
froze.
illusory form
Because
pill,
following his gaze,
she locked
he
it
saw
together
Luo
with the
Qingtong's
blood-weeping
bloodshot
parasol
eyes.
tree back
In an instant,
into the interlayer
the blood
of
red
the
light
square
in the
immortal
girl's
cauldron.
eyes began to
It was
spin
safest
rapidly.
to place such
His
a treasure
blood-red
in the
eyes,
square immortal
which were
cauldron,
originally like red jade and agate, were like blazing
after all,
suns
in
that
this
were bursting
world,
with countless
other than
flames
Luo
in this
Qingtong,
violent
who knew the
rotation,
method and
it
could
was
easily
almost
open
blinding.
it. Others
Shua,
might not be able
a ray
to
of
open
light
it even
shot out
if they
from Luo
obtained the divine
Qingtong's eyes
cauldron.
and into Song
Not to
Cheng's.
mention that they
It was
might
really
not
a
even know
projection.
that there was an
Luo
interlayer in the
Qingtong's eyes
divine
seemed to
cauldron.
shoot a blood-red
After
ray of
Luo
light into
Qingtong
Song
sealed
Cheng's
up the
eyes,
divine furnace
then he
space,
felt a sharp
she
pain
didn't
in
put
his
it
eyes.
away.
A
Instead,
blood-red seed-like
she
thing
opened the
appeared
lid
in
of
his
the
eyes,
furnace once more.
Following the appearance
She thought
of this
for a
blood-red
moment,
seed,
and then took out some
Song-Ching
high-level
felt as if
herbs
something
from the
had been
true spill
implanted in his
continent from her
mind.
trash ring.
He subconsciously wanted to
Master,
resist.
what are you doing?
But Luo Qingtong's
Little
previous
previous
words
words
rang in his
reignited
ears.
the flames in the
In an
square
instant,
immortal
he gritted
cauldron
his teeth fiercely
and tried to throw the
he
herbs
believed
into
in
the
his
cauldron.
disciple.
He was stunned.
Hadn't the enlightenment
This
spirit
time,
pill been successfully
Luo Qingtong
refined?
came to
Luo
Tianfeng
Qingtong
Inscription
had
City
already
specially
recovered
because
her
he
strength.
asked her to help.
What pill was
The
she
girl
refining
didn't need
now?
to take on this
It's
matter.
almost dawn,
But for her own sake, just for the grace of her guidance back then, she had agreed.
Chapter 2290.
At this time, shouldn't she be tidying up and preparing for the battle at the inscription tower?
Chapter
There's no
2306.
Luo
As
Qingtong's
Song-Ching
eyes
thought
dimmed.
about it,
She looked
he
at the
immediately
flames
let go of
rising
his
from the
mind
square immortal
and allowed
cauldron
the thing that had
and a
intruded
bloody
into
light
his
flashed
mind
in her
to
eyes
directly implant
Soon,
itself into
the
his
image
soul.
of the
It
illusory
was
pill
only
recipe
when this thing entered
that
his
she had
soul
imprinted in
that
her
Song-Ching
pupils with her
realized
technique
what it was.
began
In
to
an
spin
instant,
in her
he
eyes.
sucked in a deep breath.
Countless scenes
Oh my
appeared in
God.
front of Luo
He was
Qingtong
shocked as he used
with
his
the help
mind
of
to
her
look
eye
inside his
technique.
mind.
Luo
In his
Qingtong
mind,
quickly
a blood-red
extracted the
seed
most
was
crucial
spinning
elements
rapidly.
from the
Among
illusory
them,
pill recipe.
profound
Then,
explanations
she
and
searched through the
demonstrations
high-grade
about the
herbs
inscription
she had from the
patterns
true
appeared in his
continent.
mind in detail.
The medicinal
Song-Ching
efficacy of
looked
these
at the
herbs
blood-red
could not
seed
be
as it
compared to
spun.
the low-grade
He only
herbs
felt
in the
that the
heavenly wind
explanations
region.
and
But Luo
demonstrations
Qingtong
regarding
did not
inscription
need them
patterns
to be very
had
effective.
completely entered his
After
heart
all,
and soul.
the illusory
and
pill was
deeply
engraved
engraved
in
in
his mind.
Ordinary herbs
Song-Ching
could not
found it hard
completely
to explain
replicate
this
its
feeling.
medicinal efficacy.
He only knew that this
Even the
blood-red
top-grade
seed
herbs
created
in the
by
heavenly
Luo
wing
Qingtong
region could not.
had opened up all
But
his
Luo
understanding
Qingtong did
and
not want to
understanding
refine
of
the
inscription
complete
patterns.
illusory pill.
Wang, she only
As the
needed
blood-colored
a
seed
small
spun
part
in
of
the
its
air.
medicinal efficacy.
Song-Ching received
After
the knowledge
initial
of inscription
decomposition,
patterns,
combination,
his heart was shocked to the
deduction,
extreme.
and evolution.
This was inscription
Luo Qingtong
talent.
quickly came
Or
up with
rather,
a brand new pill
this was
recipe.
the inscription
The
pattern
medicinal
knowledge that
efficacy
Luo
and
Qingtong
elements
knew
of this pill
herself.
recipe
But at this
could
moment,
be obtained through
she had
Luo
imparted it
Qingtong's
to him.
blood-red eyes.
Song-Ching only
and
felt
superimposed
that he
on
had
the
learned it
high-grade
all by
herbs
himself in
she
an
had from the
instant.
true spill
He only
continent.
regained his senses
It was like
when
the
the blood
fusion
red
of
color
red and
in
blue
Luo Qingtong's
and finally
eyes
evolved
disappeared.
into a purple color.
Luo Qingtong
Song-Ching stuttered
superimposed
for a
the
long
medicinal
time,
efficacy
but couldn't say
and
the word
elements of
brother.
the various herbs
What did Luo
she had in
Qingtong
her
do
hands.
to him?
Why did
Soon,
he feel that
she
he
had
understood
extracted
the
the
medicinal
medicinal
elements
patterns
in
in
an
an
instant?
instant?
This
He
process
understood
was
all the
completely
inscription pattern
inconceivable
techniques
for an
in the
ordinary
blood-red
alchemist.
seed.
Because
Master,
for an alchemist,
Luo
the
Qingtong
pill
smiled
recipe
and looked at
determined the
him,
medicinal
interrupting
ingredients.
his stuttering.
And at the same time,
You can try to
it
control
also
the aura of
determined
the
what kind of
inscription
pill
tower
could
now.
be refined.
Luo Qingtong's
Like Luo
expression
Qingtong,
was indifferent,
taking herbs
her
that
face
did
was
not
hidden
belong
under
to
the
the golden
golden
mask.
mask.
Even
Extracting
though her
the
medicinal
medicinal
elements
elements
from
from
them,
it was
and
still
combining them at
extremely
will
evil and
was
unscrupulous.
absolutely impossible.
What she had just used
Because
on
no one had
Song-Ching
Luo
was
Qingtong's
the newest
blood-red
pupil
eyes,
technique,
which
that
could
she
see
had
through
comprehended
everything and directly
sharing,
strike at the essence.
sharing all the knowledge
Phew,
and skills
it feels
that she
so
had
good to have my
comprehended.
strength restored.
As long as she comprehended
Luo
something,
Qingtong's lips
she
curled
could
up
share it
slightly.
with the people
She
around
grabbed
her.
the pill from
Let
the
the other
four-sided
party
immortal
have
cauldron.
the same
The
comprehension
pill was
and
round
talent
and
as her.
small.
However,
and its appearance
there was
and
a
aura
time limit to
were
the
somewhat
sharing.
similar to the
With
pill
Luo
described
Qingtong's
in the
current
illusory
strength,
form pill
she
formula.
could at most last for
But
6
they were not
hours.
exactly
If
the
she
same.
shared the inscription
If there was any
patterns
difference,
she had
it
comprehended
would probably
with
be the
Song-Ching.
miniature version
In
of
other
the
words,
illusory
6
form
hours.
pill.
The
However,
mini-castrated
this
version.
should be enough for
Little
Song-Ching
Pig was
to dumbfounded
dumbfounded
as
tower
he
and
watched
obtain
Luo
victory.
Qingtong refine the pill
Song-Ching
from
was
the
both
square
surprised
immortal
and
cauldron.
delighted.
When
He
he
saw
looked
the
at
pill
Luo
in Luo
Qingtong,
Qingtong's
then
hand,
tried to
his eyes
stand up and
widened.
take a step
You,
forward.
Boom.
Illusion pill.
When he took a step forward,
It pointed at the pill
the
in
pressure
Luo
from the
Qingtong's
first
hand,
level of the
and its
inscription
jaw
tower
almost
surged
dropped.
towards him.
How is this
Then,
possible?
in the next second,
That was an
Song-Ching
origin
stood
pill.
firmly.
How
He
could
stood
Luo
still.
Qingtong possibly
Song-Ching
refine
almost
it?
cried tears
Even
of
if she
joy.
could understand the pill formula with a single glance.
On this
The
floor,
medicinal
it was almost
ingredients
difficult for
recorded
him
in the
to
formula.
It
Were
was all because
extremely
his
rare.
inscription talent
It might
wasn't
not even
enough.
exist in the heavenly
Song-Ching
wind
knew
region.
this as well,
And it might
However,
only exist
his
in the star
inscription
domains
talent
of
was
3
bestowed
stars
by the
and above.
heavens.
No
And he
matter
had
how
no way of
capable
changing
Luo
it.
Qingtong was,
Even if he had put
without
in
the
more effort than
corresponding
others,
medicinal ingredients,
if his innate talent
it was
wasn't
impossible
enough,
to refine
it
such
would
a
seal
pill,
off all
right?
his paths of improvement.
Little Pig's beady eyes However,
widened.
at this moment,
Of course not.
with the help of the
Luo
blood-red
Qingtong
seed
glanced
that
at
Luo
him.
Qingtong
Did this
had
guy think
implanted
he was
in
the
his mind,
reincarnation of a
Song
god?
Cheng's understanding of inscription patterns had increased. He had
Chapter
withstood the suppressive
2291.
aura. Without enough high-grade medicinal ingredients, it was impossible to refine the complete version of the phantom pill. If she
Chapter
was really that
2307.
awesome, Why would
Song
she need
Ching
to
almost
level up?
cried tears of
She
joy.
could destroy the
He looked
heavens
at the
in a matter
energy
of
and
minutes.
raised his hand.
Luo
In an
Qingtong
instant,
was speechless.
the energy entered
Although
his
this
body.
pill wasn't the
Following
phantom
his
pill,
movements,
it was
an
modified by
inscription
Luo
pattern was
Qingtong
drawn
according to
midair.
the effects
This
of the phantom
inscription
pill.
pattern was
She
completely
removed the
unfamiliar
effect of
to
refining
Song
the
Ching.
phantom
He
pill
was sure that
with
he
the
had
blood
never
of
seen
heaven
this
and
pattern
earth spirit
before.
beasts.
He had never
and
even
changed
learned
it
it
into
before.
another effect.
But at this
The
moment,
other effect
he was able to
was
draw
very
it so
suitable for
naturally
Luo
and smoothly
Qingtong to hide her
Song
identity.
Ching was pleasantly
Luo
surprised
Qingtong
and
looked
shocked
at the
to
pill
the
in her
extreme.
hand and
He
said
didn't know
with a
what was going
mysterious
on.
smile,
How did
"This
Luo
pill will be
Qingtong do
called the
this?
small phantom
How could
pill."
she improve
She
someone's
didn't
innate
expect
talent
that
in
there
an
would be a
instant?
pill like the
And
phantom
Song
pill in
Ching
this
felt
world.
that the innate
With
talent
that
in
thought,
his body
Luo
didn't
Qingtong
belong to
swallowed
him.
the elixir.
It belonged
In
to
an instant,
Luo Qingtong.
Little Pig saw the
It belonged
changes
to
on
his
her body
disciple.
at a speed
Song
visible
Ching
to the
felt
naked
that only
eye.
Luo Qingtong
Plop,
could draw
because
such a
Little Pig
monstrous
was too
innate
shocked.
talent. He
And
fell
such
from
an
Luo
unheard of
Qingtong's shoulder
inscription
and
pattern.
heavily fell on
In
his
addition,
butt. If it
Luo
was any
Qingtong
other
asked
time,
him to look
he
into
would have
her
already
eyes
cried
and not
out.
resist.
However,
Song Ching
at this
immediately
moment,
thought
because
that
it was
Luo
too
Qingtong
shocked and
had
incredulous,
transferred her
its
innate
eyes were
talent
wide
to him.
open.
Thinking
And
of
it
this,
forgot that
Song
its butt
Ching
was
was
hurting
shocked.
from the fall.
The worry in
Oh
his
my
heart
God,
overshadowed
you.
the shock.
When Little
He
Pig's
hurriedly
voice
ran
sounded
to
out,
Luo Qingtong's
there were
side and
already
hurriedly
people
asked,
impatiently
"You
rushing
silly
over to
girl,
the inscription
is my
plaza
innate talent yours
at the
now?
western end of
You gave
Heavenly
me your
Wind
innate
Inscription
talent.
City.
Where is
As
your
the
innate
sky lit
talent?"
up. Today was the day
Before
that the
Song
people
Ching
of
could
Lung
finish
Yu
his
Inscription
words,
City
Luo
took away
Qingtong
the
waved her
inscription
hand,
tower,
and an
the
inscription
inscription
pattern
tower
appeared
was
in front
located
of him.
beside the
"I'm
westernmost
fine,
inscription
master."
plaza.
Luo Qingtong
It was the
looked at
place
Song
where the
Ching's shocked
inscription
reactions
masters of
smiled.
Heavenly Wind
The
Inscription
latter, on
City
the other hand,
gathered
could
early
do
in the
nothing
morning
but stare with
at
his
this
mouth
moment.
agape.
Other than
What
the
would the
inscription masters
asterisk
of
CK?
Heavenly Wind
He looked at the
Inscription City,
inscription pattern
there
that
were other
appeared
people
beside
of
Luo
Heavenly Wind
Qingtong and
Inscription
was
City.
shocked.
As
What was going
city,
on?
Heavenly
Luo
Wind Inscription's
Qingtong's
innate
city
talent
naturally
had been
didn't
transferred
only
to
have
him.
inscription
She
masters.
still had an innate talent.
There were also many
Then
ordinary
didn't
people
she create an
cultivators
innate talent
and soul
for him?
cultivators.
She
These
copied her
people
innate
relied
talent
on
for
Heavenly
him.
Wind
How
Inscription
did he do
City
it?
to survive.
Song Cheng was
Now that the
dumbfounded.
inscription
He
tower
stared
was going to
blankly
be
at Luo
taken away
Qingtong
by the
He
people
had no
of
idea
Lung
how
Yu
she did
Inscription
it.
City.
This was
They
inscription
were naturally
talent.
heartbroken.
Since ancient
Not
times,
to mention that
one's
Heavenly
innate
Wind
talent was
Inscription
destined,
City was going to
just
be
like how
disbanded.
geniuses were born.
From now on,
it was
there would be
impossible
no
to
more
change
Heavenly
it with
Wind
human
Inscription
effort.
City.
A
In
lack
the
of
Heavenly
talent
Wind
in martial
region.
arts could
Everyone
be
was
compensated with
heartbroken,
other treasures
but there
of
was
heaven
nothing
and
they could
earth.
do.
And the
Unless
ability
they
of
could
the
defeat
soul
the
seal.
people of Lung
But
Yu
with their
Inscription
inscription
City
talents,
and take
how
back
could
the
they make up
inscription
for it?
tower.
This was
The
the
owner
same
of
as
the
alchemy
inscription
talent
tower would
and a
definitely
reformation
change.
talent.
But if
they
they
were
could
all
defeat the
fated from
people of
birth
Lung
and
Yu
couldn't be
Inscription
changed.
City,
Song
why
Cheng
would
was
they need
shocked
to
to the
rely on the
extreme.
bet in Song
He pointed
City
at
to
Luo
escape from the
Qingtong
owner
and said,
changed 3 years ago?
"Ui, for a long time." Before he
The
could
city
say
lord of
anything,
Heavenly Wind
a violent
Inscription
collision
City
of energy
had been
suddenly
severely
came from the
injured
top
in the
floor
previous
of the inscription
tower
tower,
battle.
Boom,
And was unable
the
to
impact of the
participate
collision
in the
of
battle.
these forces
As
was
for the other
particularly
inscription
strong,
masters,
especially
none
when
of them
Luo
could surpass
Qingtong
him
and
in
Song
terms of
Cheng were
inscription
surrounded by the
attainments.
aura of the inscription tower.
masters of Lung
This
Yu
feeling
Lung Yu
was
City
even more
City.
obvious. Originally, by relying on Song City's bet,
Oh no,
they
they
could
could
have
have
avoided
avoided
the
the
challenge
challenge
of the
Song
inscription
Ching's
tower
face
3
turned
years
solemn.
ago. He said
12
coldly,
years later,
they must have
might
caught
have
up
been
with
able
the
to
people
nurture a
from Lung
person
Yu's inscription
who could
city
take on Lung
and
Yu's
fought with them.
inscription city alone.
Disciple, let's
But
go
who
up
would have
quickly.
thought that the people
As
of
Song
Lung
Ching
Yu
spoke,
Inscription
he hurriedly
City
rushed up,
would
act shamelessly and admit that they lost the bet. In reality, they used the loophole in the bet to say that the people
Chapter
of Heavenly Wind
2308
Inscription City
on the 3rd
didn't
floor.
give up the challenge.
The people from
They
Lung
wanted
Yu
to
Inscription
challenge again
City
1 year
were
later,
confronting the people from Tianfeng Inscription City.
You want to charge up with just the people from
Chapter
Tianfeng Inscription
2292.
City? But even
The
so,
people from
the
Lung
time
Yu
they needed
Inscription
was far
City
from
sneered.
enough. As
And
they
the
drew
savior
inscription
that
patterns,
Song Ching
they
spoke of were
smashed
summoned
towards the
wrongly.
people from Tianfeng
Although no one
Inscription
placed their
City
hopes on
and
the
mocked
disciple
them.
that he spoke
In the
of,
inscription
they
tower,
still held on
one
to a
was
trace
not
of
allowed
hope.
to fight directly.
But at this moment,
they
this
could only
sliver of
use
hope was
inscription
shattered.
patterns
patterns to
Everyone's
attack each
hearts
other.
were filled with
The two
sadness,
parties involved in
while
the
the people
attack
from
would use
Heavenly Wind
inscription
Inscription
patterns
City
to
were
determine the
gathering.
victor.
The
This
people
was the
from
Do
Lung Yu
seal that
Inscription
Song Chung
City
and Luo
also
Qingtang
arrived
had
when the
mentioned
sky
before.
was completely bright.
Whoever produced the
They
higher
stepped on the
level
morning
inscription
mist and
pattern
arrived,
would be
looking
able
at
to
the
win
towering
against
and
the
majestic
opponent,
inscription
and the
tower
loser
in
would
front of
naturally
them.
be
A
expelled by
trace
the
of
power
greed
of the
flashed across
inscription
the
tower.
eyes of Lung Yu
Of course,
Inscription City's
because of the
city lord
uniqueness of the
and
Do
the
seal.
others.
Then,
Both parties who
they looked
used
at the
inscription
people of
patterns
Heavenly
would
Wind
inevitably
Inscription
suffer
City,
some injuries.
who had sorrowful
Most
and
of these
helpless
injuries
expressions
came
and
from the
said,
power of the
"Haha."
explosion.
Everyone
When the
from Heavenly
inscription
Wind
patterns were
Inscription
lost.
City.
When the
It would be
power of the
impolite for us
inscription
to
patterns
refuse this
exploded out,
inscription tower.
it would sometimes
As he
injure
spoke,
the
he
nearby
laughed
caster.
complacently.
Thus,
Then,
it was
he
normal
waved
to
his
be
hand
injured in the
and was
battle
about
of the
to let
inscription
someone
tower.
take over the
Of
inscription
course,
tower.
there were
and bring
also
it back
people
to
who
Lung Yu
deliberately
Inscription
used
City.
inscription techniques
After all,
to crush their
such a
opponents.
magic tool
They
naturally had a
controlled
way
it
to
to a
fly in
certain
the air.
degree, not only preventing the opponent from being expelled by the inscription tower, back to his city, but also causing the people of Heavenly Wind Inscription City heard his
torturing
words.
the opponent
The
like
sorrow
this.
in their hearts
Right
was
now,
indescribable.
The people from Lung
and
Yu
the shopkeeper of the
City
pharmacy
and Tianfeng
who had
Inscription
received
City
Luo Qingtong's
were in such a
prescription
situation,
and heard her
the people
say
from Lung
that
Yu
Heavenly Wind
Inscription
City
sneered
would
as
not
they
fall
looked in the
was also
direction
in
of the
crowd.
people from
He was full of
Tianfeng
hope as he waited
City.
for a miracle
The
to
power
happen.
of the inscription
However,
patterns in their
until
hands
the people of Lung
was
Yu
just slightly
Inscription City
stronger
arrived,
than the power of the
there was
people
still
from
no change in
Tianfeng
Heavenly Wind
Inscription City.
Every time it
It
hit
was
their
still the
inscription
same
patterns,
The
a
power
miracle
of the
did not
explosion
happen.
was like a sword
Sai,
that
how
cut
could
into
this
the
be?
bodies of the
That
people
little
from
senior
Tianfeng
clearly said
Inscription
that Heavenly
City,
Wind Inscription
causing them
City
to
would
bleed
not
profusely
fall.
without
His
being
voice was
expelled by the
muttering,
inscription
completely
tower.
unable to
Haha,
accept such
you
an
people
outcome.
from Tianfeng
Senior
Inscription
expert,
City,
that was his
resist.
impression of Luo
Why aren't you
Qingtong.
resisting?
Ever since
The
the
people
young
from
girl
Lung
gave
Yu
him the
Inscription
prescription,
City
were extremely
the shopkeeper
pleased.
of the pharmacy
They looked
had
at the
regarded
people from
Luo
Tianfeng
Qingtong
Inscription
as a
City,
reclusive
their
senior
faces
expert.
full of ridicule.
He believed her
Lung
words
Yu
without a
Inscription
doubt.
City Lord and
However,
Master Chen
he had
were
been
not
waiting
among
for
them.
this moment.
The two of
But
them
a
had
miracle
already
did not
climbed
happen.
up.
Lung
As
Yu
for the
City Lord
shopkeepers
also
behind
brought
him,
along a few
who
of his
relied on
trusted
the Heavenly Wind
subordinates,
Inscription
who were
City
also
to
high-level
survive.
inscription
They were even
masters
more
from
sobbing.
Lung Yu City.
At this
The
moment,
rest of the people
Song
stayed on the
Ching stood
third
out
floor
from Heavenly
to
Wind
snipe the
Inscription
people from
City's group.
Inscription City.
Wait, and most of
Song
the
Ching
injuries
was
on their
panicking to
bodies
death.
were caused by
Where was
Lung
his
Yu
precious
Inscription
disciple?
City Lord,
And
she
the
said that
others?
she wanted him to
You
get
people
her
from
an
Lung Yu
identity
Inscription
and
City
send
are
her to her
shameless.
place before disappearing. Luo Qingtong's room was covered with
injured
layers
sky
of
wind
Inscription
formations,
City Senior
including
Inscription
illusory
Master
array and
scolded
maze
as he
array.
struggled to
Song
defend
Cheng
against
could
the
not find
inscription
Luo
patterns
Qingtong,
blasted out by
so
the
he
cold
naturally
jade
thought that
inscription
she was
city.
not in her room.
With his strength, he wouldn't have been threatened by the people of Lung
Before
Yu
he came to
Inscription
the
City.
Inscription Plaza,
However, he had
City
almost
Lord
turned
Lung
the
Yu
entire
and the others
Heavenly
had
Wind
purposely
Inscription
waited on
City
the third
upside
floor
down, and
but there was
purposely
still
injured
no
them.
sign of Luo
Then,
Qingtong.
they would let these
If
low
Song
and
Cheng
mid-level
didn't know his
inscription
disciple's
masters of
temperament,
cold jade
he would have
inscription
thought that
city
his disciple
humiliate
had
them.
run away.
This Heavenly
because
Wind
the task
Inscription
was too
City's
difficult.
Senior Inscription
Although he
Master
didn't know why Luo
was so
Qingtong
angry
hadn't
that
arrived
his eyes
yet.
turned red.
For the sake of Heavenly
Haha,
Wind
what
Inscription
shameless.
City,
And
we're winning with
Inscription
our
Pagoda.
strength.
That
Song
person
Ching
from
still
Cold
praised
Jade
himself
Inscription
and
City
stood out.
laughed loudly.
People of Lung
He
Yu
felt proud in
Inscription
his
City.
heart. Have you all
Don't you
forgotten
people from
something?
Heaven Wind
He looked at
Inscription
Lung
City
Yu
want to climb
Inscription
up?
City's City
Didn't
Lord
he want to
and
win
the
back
others
the
and shouted
inscription tower?
sternly, "Climb."
This inscription
He
pagoda
laughed
can
loudly,
only be taken away
causing the
after a
surrounding
challenge.
people from Cold
Aren't
Jade
you all being
Inscription
too
City
impatient?
to burst into laughter.
My disciple,
They
come
had
back
received
quickly.
orders from City
Song
Lord
Ching
Lung Yu
scolded
to
sternly
play
while
with this group
praying
of
in his
people
heart that
from
Luo
Tianfeng
Qingtong would hurry
Inscription
over.
City to death.
With his understanding
Didn't they want
of
to
Luo
climb up?
Qingtong,
They wanted
the
to
young
block
girl
them
would
here
definitely do
and
what
let
she
them
promised
watch in despair
and
as
would
the city
definitely
lord
rush over.
and the others
hoped
won
that
the
she would hurry
inscription
up.
tower. It would be best if they could force their minds to collapse and kneel down to beg for
Chapter
mercy.
2293.
Haha.
The
group
people
of
of
people
Lung Yu
from Cold
Inscription
Jade
City
Inscription
immediately
City
looked at him.
attacked the people
Yo,
from Tianfeng
Song Cheng,
Inscription
is
City.
there something wrong with your head?
A person from Lung Yu Inscription City said with a fake smile. You want to challenge our Lung Yu Inscription City with just a group of defeated
An attack
soldiers?
suddenly came from the back
I'm
of the
afraid
Lung
you've
Yu
forgotten why you made that
people,
12-year bet with
which
us,
was
right?
the path from the
The
second
person
floor
from
to
Lung
the
Yu
third
Inscription
floor.
City
Bang,
said as he
when the
sneered
people from Lung
and
Yu
looked at the
Inscription
group of
City
people
felt the
from
attack.
Tianfeng
They
Inscription
immediately
City with
stopped
disdain.
laughing and coldly
Ever
shouted
since the city
towards the
lord of
direction of
Tianfeng
Luo
Inscription
Qingtong
City
and the others
was injured by Master
is it?
Chen.
The person who will make you all
Tianfeng Inscription
following
City
Song Cheng's
was already
voice.
in the bag
He
of
and
their
Luo
Lung Yu
Qingtong
Inscription
instantly
City.
appeared on
Now
the
that the
stairs from
people
the
of
second
Lung Yu
floor to the
Inscription
third
City
floor
had come to
Song
take the
Cheng's eyes
inscription
were spitting
tower.
fire.
The people
He
of
looked at the
Tianfeng
arrogant people
Inscription
from
City
Lung Yu
actually
Inscription
wanted
City
to
in
challenge
front of
them.
him.
They were
And his
simply
eyes were
overestimating
extremely red.
themselves.
These
The group
bastards,
of people from
after Song
Tianfeng
Cheng rushed to
Inscription
the
City
second floor,
also looked at
he
Song Cheng
realized
in
that there were no
confusion.
people from
They had
Lung
no
Yu
way of winning
Inscription
against
City
the people
and
of Lung Yu
Tianfeng
Inscription City on the
Song
second
Cheng's
floor.
challenge was
He hurriedly
just to give the
rushed
people
towards
of
the third
Lung Yu
floor.
Inscription
He
City
didn't
another
expect them
chance
to really
humiliate
be here.
them.
After
Why would he
hearing
do
what
that?
the people from
A
Lung
group
Yu
of
Inscription
Inscription City
masters
said.
beside the city
Song
lord
Cheng
of
wished that he could kill them.
City.
The people from Lung Yu Inscription City had gone too far,
but they were stopped.
Not
by
only
old
did they
city
want to
Lord
snatch
Zhang.
the inscription tower
Forget
from
it.
Tianfeng
He coughed lightly and
City.
waved his hand.
They also wanted
It's
to
rare
block
for
the
Chung
people from
to have such
Tianfeng
intentions.
Inscription City. He wants to
And let
fight
these
for the
people
last
from
bit
Lung
of
Yu
dignity
Inscription
for the
City,
people of
who are weaker
Tianfeng
than them,
Inscription
humiliate
City
and crush
Let's
them.
not stop him.
Song Chung looked
Actually,
at the wounds
even
and
for
blood
me,
on the bodies
I
of
really
the
can't bear
Tianfeng
to give up the
Inscription
inscription
tower without even
masters.
competing.
And was
As
about
he spoke,
to die
he
from
coughed
anger
violently.
The inscription
bent
tower
back
didn't
slowly,
allow
straightened
anyone
bit
to
by
injure
bit.
others.
He returned
Unless
to
his
his difference
previous
in
strength
strength
was too
before
great,
his life
and they
inscription
couldn't
mark was
withstand the
destroyed.
power of the inscription
His face was
tower
flushed
and died.
red.
However, the power of this kind of attack in his body by the inscription tower to his previous glory. Once the inscription tower determined that it was a malicious attack at the appearance of the city lord of Tianfeng fight for the inscription tower would be taken away. The people of Tianfeng inscription city, even if something in their hearts, the people from Lung Yu inscription city, they knew in their hearts that the city lord of Tianfeng inscription the inscription tower clearly decided to fight from Lung Yu inscription city saw him and Luo Qingtong appear. Even if he lost in the end, their laughter became even more savage. Sure enough, our Tianfeng inscription city's trash the city lord's voice continued to ring out. Bad. He actually broke through the second floor. City. Get ready up to the third floor. As his voice rang out, let me guess, did he crawl inscription city? A beginner inscription master from cold jade inscription his back was straight at Song and his face was filled with sweaty appearance as he looked at Lung Yu inscription city Xiao Chen's opinion. And the others. Song Cheng had gone through a lot to reach the third floor. Your people from Lung Yu city want to take away the inscription tower from our heavenly wind inscription city. Who knew how much pressure he had suffered inside. As for Luo Qingtong beside him, he nodded. There was no need to care about her at all. Lung Yu. He had no idea where this young man had come from. Just step over my corpse beside Song Ching out of nowhere. The inscription tower was stood up for him, and the other party claimed to be his disciple. Was disbanded. From now on, he would never be able to touch his most beloved inscription technique. Even if the heavenly wind had some talent, city lord felt that his life was meaningless. Moreover, even if he lost, he would do his best. So even if he were to die about her, he would die standing. Given the other party's age, it was impossible for him to be instantly dumbfounded from Song City. With his master's strength. Therefore, how could he possibly in the direction of the people of Lung Yu inscription without fear? After loudly mocking Song Cheng, the junior inscription master from Cold Jade Inscription City directly threw an inscription pattern at Song Cheng. He wanted to see Song Cheng fall to the ground in a sorry state. Song Cheng was just a piece of trash from Tianfeng Inscription City. If he didn't have a fortuitous encounter outside, he wouldn't even be an inscription master. What right did he have to shout at him? As the junior inscription master from Cold Jade Inscription City thought about it, he sneered in his heart. Chapter 23:10. Song Cheng rushing up was like walking right into a trap. Since he wanted to be unlucky, then they would fulfill his wish. However, just as the sneer and smugness appeared on his face, it instantly froze on his lips. How is this possible? He looked in front of him in shock. He saw Song Cheng raise his hand and draw an inscription pattern to block the inscription pattern that he blasted out. Not only that, after the inscription pattern broke his inscription pattern, it rushed towards him. The inscription master from Cold Jade Inscription City looked in the direction that the inscription pattern was rushing towards, and was dumbfounded. What was going on? That Heavenly Wind Inscription City's famous trash, Song Cheng, actually blocked the inscription pattern that he blasted out? Not only that, he even blasted the inscription pattern that he blasted out and blasted it towards him? The inscription master from Cold Jade Inscription City was shocked. He couldn't believe it no matter what. He looked at the inscription pattern that was rushing towards him, and suddenly raised his hand. In an instant, there was a loud bang, and another inscription pattern blasted out from his hand, to meet the inscription pattern that Song Cheng had blasted out. Bang! The two inscription patterns collided in midair. With a bang, under the shocked and incredulous gazes of the crowd, the inscription pattern blasted out by the inscription master from Cold Jade Inscription City was instantly blasted into pieces. The inscription master from Cold Jade Inscription City let out a blood-curdling scream. After that, his body was cut by the energy that blasted out from the inscription pattern. Fresh blood spurted out, and the inscription master from Cold Jade Inscription City fell to the ground. Looking at the inscription master from Cold Jade Inscription City's fallen body, the crowd from Cold Jade Inscription City and Heavenly Wind Inscription City were all shocked. They looked at Song Cheng, who was standing at the entrance of the staircase, and their hearts were shocked to the extreme, especially the crowd from Heavenly Wind Inscription City. They originally wanted to ask Song Cheng to leave quickly and not suffer for nothing. However, they didn't expect that Song Cheng would actually defeat the inscription master from Cold Jade Inscription City with just a raise of his hand. One had to know that if this battle result was placed on anyone else, it wouldn't make them so shocked. However, the person who did this was Song Cheng, Junior apprentice brother Chung. The people of Heavenly Wind Inscription City were both surprised and happy. As for Song Chung, when he first made his move, he was still very nervous. However, when he saw the beginner-level inscription master from Cold Jade Inscription City that was defeated by him, his heart was filled with an indescribable excitement. He really did it. The inscription talent that his disciple passed to him was actually real. Song Chung could feel the ease with which he had just blasted out that attack. The flaws of the other party's inscription patterns were easily grasped by him. It was obvious that his inscription talent was above his opponent's. That was why he was able to see through the flaws in the other party's inscription pattern and break it with ease. Song Cheng's heart was filled with excitement. He nodded towards the group of people from Heavenly Wind Inscription City and said coldly, "Senior brother, all of you stand aside and let me deal with them." Song Cheng's words were filled with great confidence. As for the other people in Cold Jade Inscription City, they had also recovered from their shock. Chapter 23:11. Song Chung. Don't think that you don't know what kind of dog shit luck you have. You can be arrogant in front of us just because you have a breakthrough. With just you alone, you actually want to deal with a group of us. What a joke. The group of people from Lungyu Inscription City sneered. Although they don't know how Song Cheng's inscription skills increased so much. But even so, they are not people that Song Cheng can deal with alone. The people from Lungyu Inscription City thought and raised their hands. One of them said coldly, Let's beat the people from Heavenly Wind Inscription City out first. Let's see what Song Cheng can do." As the group of people spoke, they immediately rushed towards the group of people from Heavenly Wind Inscription City. The latter group was previously injured by Lungyu Inscription City Lord and the others. Just now they were suppressed by them for so long. Their entire body is covered in injuries, and they can barely stay in the inscription tower. They are unable to fight back at all. Seeing this scene, Song Cheng's face suddenly turned cold. He said to Luo Qingtong, "Disciple, help me protect them." After waiting for Luo Qingtong's affirmative answer, he immediately rushed out. Boom! Song Cheng's hand blasted out inscription patterns one after another, rushing towards the people from Lungyu Inscription City. The latter group was originally rushing towards the people from Heavenly Wind Inscription City. However, Luo Qingtong's figure flashed and appeared beside them. Boom boom boom. The inscription patterns that they blasted out were all blocked by Luo Qingtong. Looking at the youth's relaxed movements, it was indescribably smooth. In an instant, the group of people from Lungyu Inscription City opened their eyes wide. They looked at the youth in front of them in disbelief. The latter's figure is like the wind. He is tall and slender, holding a jade fan in his hand. What an outstanding and casual style. Sorry, the people that my master wants to protect. You can't touch a single one of them. Luo Qingtong lightly waved the jade fan in her hand and easily blocked the inscription patterns that they blasted out. Most of the inscription masters left behind in Cold Jade Inscription City were elementary and intermediate level inscription masters. The high-level inscription masters had already followed the city lord to the 4th floor, or even higher. When Luo Qingtong dealt with them, it was a piece of cake. The only reason he hadn't immediately dealt with them was because he wanted to leave them for Song Cheng to deal with. Boom! As Luo Qingtong blocked all the inscription patterns of the Cold Jade Inscription City, Song Cheng's attack also arrived. The inscription pattern he drew in his hand directly blasted towards the people in the Cold Jade Inscription City. Bang bang bang. Those people from Cold Jade Inscription City didn't expect that Luo Qingtong would be able to block their attacks. They also didn't expect that Song Cheng's inscription skills would be so much stronger than what they had imagined. They hurriedly drew their inscription patterns to collide with Song Cheng's inscription patterns. However, they did not expect that their inscription patterns would be destroyed. Boom boom boom. One by one, the inscription patterns exploded. In the next moment, a terrifying aura suddenly burst out from those inscription patterns, causing the inscription masters in Cold Jade Inscription City to be thrown off their feet. They screamed out miserably. Some of them were originally going to be blasted out of the inscription tower by the terrifying aura. However, Luo Qingtong was already prepared. When Song Qing attacked, she immediately followed up. Chapter 23:12. The inscription pattern created by Luo Qingtong coincidentally collided with the inscription pattern created by Song Qing, and the inscription pattern created by the people from Lungyu Inscription City. Under such an attack, the aura of the inscription pattern created by Luo Qingtong, and the inscription pattern created by Song Qing, and the inscription pattern created by the people from Lungyu Inscription City cancelled each other out. It caused the aura of the inscription pattern to explode, and cut the people from Lungyu Inscription City to the point that they were drenched in blood. However, it didn't injure them at all, causing them to be unable to escape from the inscription tower with heavy injuries. "Alright, Uncle Masters," said Yi Futian. Luo Qingtong looked at the injured people from Lungyu Inscription City, and said to the people from Heavenly Wind Inscription City with a smile, "They are here, you can deal with them. Martial uncles, please don't show any mercy. Just deal with them the way they dealt with you guys." The moment Luo Qingtong's words left her mouth, the people from Heavenly Wind Inscription City, who were stunned, instantly regained their senses and looked at her with astonishment. How could the crowd not see that Luo Qingtong's disciple's inscription pattern ability was above Song Cheng's? Otherwise, it would be impossible for her to block the aura of the inscription pattern created by Song Cheng and the people from Lungyu Inscription City so easily. Coincidentally, she was able to control the aura of the inscription pattern at the same level, causing the people from Lungyu Inscription City to be injured, but not sent out of the inscription tower. This inscription pattern control ability was simply terrifying. The crowd was overwhelmed with shock. They didn't know what was going on. Such a person with such a powerful inscription pattern talent was actually Song Cheng's disciple. Not only that, Song Cheng's inscription pattern talent had also increased so much in an instant. What was going on? The crowd was shocked. They didn't know what was going on. Only Song Cheng knew that this was all due to his disciple's ability. However, he couldn't tell his martial brothers about this. After all, this was Luo Qingtong's own ability. Moreover, it was best for fewer people to know about this girl's ability. It wasn't that Song Cheng didn't believe in his senior brothers, but Luo Qingtong's ability was too special. He was able to provide his abilities to others. How attractive would this be to those who did not have the strength or talent? Song Cheng didn't know if Luo Qingtong could only provide inscription talents to others, or if she could provide other talents as well. But just having the same inscription talent was enough to make people go crazy. In this world, there were very few people with inscription talent, not to mention Luo Qingtong's inscription talent. She was one in a million. Under such circumstances, if everyone knew that Luo Qingtong had such an ability, wouldn't Luo Qingtong be like a delicious cake? Everyone would want to take a bite of her. He wanted to obtain her inscription talent and strength from her. If such a thing were to happen, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, Song Cheng would never reveal Luo Qingtong's heaven-defying ability. Even if it was the Heavenly Wind Inscription City's lord, he wouldn't say it. Unless Luo Qingtong told him that he could reveal it, he would carry this secret with him to the grave. Song Cheng made up his mind. He didn't mention a single word about Luo Qingtong's ability. He also didn't say how he was able to obtain his current talent and strength. He only let the Heavenly Wind Inscription Cities people take care of these Lungyu Inscription Cities people. As for himself, he continued to rush upstairs with Luo Qingtong. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.